Hey there, crafty friends. Today in the lab, I'm going to show you how I make watch face earrings from old watches. And this has been an item that I've sold really well. I've sold a few in my eBay store. I've sold them in little pop-up shops and consignment shops, and also mostly at the Recycle Santa Fe, which is a craft show that's once a year that I attend. And that's mostly where I sell things nowadays, but these have kind of sold across the board. And I think I've just made a really good improvement to them. So my first iteration, I actually punched a hole into the watch face, and that can work, but I don't recommend it because you can easily damage the watch face. But of course I have sold these in this version. And for these first two versions, I just used Mod Podge to kind of coat and hold the hands and everything in place. But they're a little bit fragile, and they do kind of break off. You can lose the hands of the watch pretty easily. So my second iteration, I did some wire wrapping in the back to make a jewelry bail, which works better. You don't damage the watch face nearly as easily. And then today I'm going to actually be using some resin. So I experimented with a couple of different methods, and I'm a little bit new to resin. So this first way I don't think turned out really great. You can see how thick it is, and I didn't get it really level either. It is nice and sturdy now, so you're not going to lose any of the parts on the front or the back, but it's a little ununiform and a little bit thick. So the method that I came up with is this final method, and I'm really happy with it. It's kind of just dripping and brushing a coat of resin on the front and the back of the watch face, and you get a nice shiny finish and a nice smooth finish, and you're not going to lose any of your hands of the watch. Nothing's gonna, sometimes the numbers can come off too if you're not careful. So this is the method that I'm going to demonstrate today. So for this project, you're going to need a pair of gloves. I have just an old paring knife here, a little cloth. You want a ruler, 2 sets of needle nose pliers, and you're also going to need some round-tipped jewelry pliers and your jewelry findings. So I've got some, you want some 5 or 6 millimeter jump rings, your earring hooks, and some 24 gauge wire. You're also going to need your resin, and I have only used this Let's Resin UV resin. I know some of them are a little bit different. Some claim to be more clear. I don't know. This one has worked really well for me in my projects. And I also have this bonding kit. And if you have the bonding kit, this little light, UV light, will come in handy for this project as well. If you don't have it, you can just use a regular UV light, but the little flashlight comes in handy for some of the just quick bonding. I like to have a little bit of paper towel handy, and I have a little bit of alcohol in this spray bottle just to help kind of keep things a little cleaner. You're going to want a pair of plastic gloves. I've got a dedicated paintbrush that I use for my resin. And then I just have this little UV resin light. I think it was less than $15 on Amazon. It was a pretty good little purchase, and it definitely has works well for this project. When I started using resin, I was just using this UV resin, and the flashlight was enough for some of the smaller things that I was making. But if you do any real crafting with resin, you're definitely going to want a resin or a UV light. And you also need a wooden skewer. And of course you need your watches. When you're looking for watches, you want to kind of visualize how they're going to go together, like these make a nice little mismatched pair. I've also got these. They don't have to be the same size, but I think the square shapes go nicely together. And these I got at 2 different times, so I've already taken the watch face out of this one, but I think that this will make a nice complement for that. So just a couple of notes on the watches. I usually find mine on eBay, but you can also find them at estate sales. Check your own jewelry drawer if you're just making one set of earrings. If you're interested in making these to sell, I definitely recommend going through eBay. Just kind of make sure that you're making sure that you're getting watch faces that are kind of fun and that are going to fit together. And I bought seven watches for around $11. I try not to pay too much more than $1 per watch, but you can certainly see what fits into your budget. So the first step is to remove the watch faces from the watches. And to do this, I'm going to use my little cloth, my protective gloves, and my paring knife. It's easier if you leave the watches on the watch band. It just gives you a little bit more to hold on to. And some watches are a lot easier to get open than others. I don't know if you can see, I think you can kind of see that there's just a little bit of a notch right here on the back of this watch casing. And that, if you can find that, it's pretty easy to open. You just need to get your knife kind of in that groove, and then you're just going to twist the knife until you pop that back off. And I just like to kind of wrap my cloth around there, and you can hear it pop open when you get it open. Now, there are some pieces in here that I save and some pieces that I don't. But to get the watch face out, you're going to have to break this little pin. And so I just pull on the watch face until that kind of snaps. And breaks off. And then I have saved these little pieces just for fun. I haven't figured out anything to do with these plastic shapes. I've made a few things using the watch bands themselves, and I also have a video tutorial on how to make pendants with little dioramas in them out of the watch casing itself. So check that out if you're interested in some more projects that you can make from the leftover watch parts. But basically, that is all you need to do to get the watches open. Now, one last note. I like to take the battery out just because I don't want it falling out later. And in some cases, it's actually a good little place to put your wire bail in that hole where the battery was. So do be careful and dispose of these properly, but I do think it's probably best if you remove them from the watch since the back of the watch is exposed. Sometimes it takes more than one try to get the backs off, and some backs will look a little different, and I have had a few watches where I was not able to get the backs off at all, so you just have to kind of use the ones you can use, and you may have to give up on a few of them. They make watch kits that you can get that have the tools in them, little screwdrivers and a kind of a knife-shaped thing to pop the backs off with, but honestly I've found that this is the easiest way to go. But you can see that I'm having a little trouble with this one. So you have to be patient sometimes. This definitely has a notch in it. I just can't get my knife in there very well. There we go. So same thing here. You're just gonna take the plastic piece out. It usually comes out by itself, or you can pull them out together, whichever is easiest. Save my little watch winding pin, whatever they're called. And take that plastic piece off and get my battery out of there. You do want to handle these a little bit delicately when you first are working with them, because like I said, you can, knock the hands of the watch, and sometimes the numbers and markings on the watch aren't even on there that securely, so you do want to be kind of careful. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the rest of the backs off here, and we'll be back for the next step. So I've gotten all of my watches opened, and this pink strapped one did take a little perseverance, but I did get it open. I was originally thinking these two were going to be a good pair, and maybe they're okay. They're a little bit too different in size, so I was kind of thinking of maybe pairing these two and these two. But I can decide that once the earrings are put together. So the next step is to make the jewelry bales. And for that, you're going to need the round-tipped jewelry pliers, your 24 gauge wire, and your ruler. And you can wrap the wire any way you want to, and you can also use a different weight of wire if you want to. I've just found that anything heavier than 24 is just a little bit too hard to work with. I do a lot of things with 20 gauge wire, but for this, it's a little too hard to work with. So I'm just going to make a very simple bale that fits inside where that battery was, and just makes the little loop to hook the jump ring and the earring hook to. So I'm going to start with a 5-inch piece of wire. And because this wire is a little thinner, I like to wrap it 3 times and make kind of a hoop with 3 rings, but you could do 2 if you wanted to, or even 1 if you wanted, but you can see how flexible this wire is. So I'm folding it in half, and then I'm going to put it around the widest portion of my jewelry pliers and just crisscross it once. And then I'm going to take my pliers out and flip them over so that I can crisscross them again. And now you'll see that I have 3 rings here. I'm going to kind of pinch them together. I'm going to grab the rings all together again, and then this time I'm going to twist the wires around the bottom. So 1, 2, 3 times, depending on where your how big your watch face is. Like, I'm going to need a fairly long piece of twisted wire because my little jewelry bale portion is going to fit way down here. So I'm going to twist this maybe, I don't know, 6 times. And then you can kind of test out if that's long enough. You want your ring to stick up above the watch face. So I think that's going to work pretty well. So now I'm just going to take each of my wires individually, and I'm going to make a flat coil. And I'm going to start at the very tip of my jewelry pliers and make 1 loop. And then I can use the flat portion of my pliers to just roll a coil and keep it flat. And I'm just going to roll all the way up almost to where I've twisted the wires. And then I'll repeat that process on the other side. There are a ton of different ways to wrap the wires, so if you have a different way that you prefer, you can definitely use that. But I just think this works well with the watches because you can put this little coil in the spot where the battery was. So now I'm going to put these two coils together, if they're the same length here. And then I'm just going to finish coiling them as one coil. So I've got my loop for the earring hook here and my little jewelry bail that's going to hook to the back of the watch. And this extension, or this twisted portion, is sort of how long my wire needs to be for everything to fit together. So you can see how that fits in there. Now, like I said, you could have left those separate and I could have attached them out to the watch face, but I just kind of like this cleaner, simpler look. So I'm going to finish making the rest of my jewelry bales and we'll be back to attach them. So I'm ready to attach my little jewelry bales, but I want to make sure that I get my ring lined up with the 12 o'clock marker, which can be a little bit tricky because this isn't exactly straight. So I want to take just a Sharpie or something, and I'm just going to make a little tiny mark right on the back at the 12 o'clock point. So you can see that little spot right there. And that way, when I put my jewelry bail into the little battery spot, I can make sure that I have my ring lined up right on that mark. So I've already marked my other watch faces, so I'm just gonna make sure everything's laying flat and that I have it lined up on my marks. This one's a little off kilter. And you do want to be gentle with your watch faces. I think I'm going to make this one a little longer. You want to be careful with your watch faces and treat them kind of gently right now because we haven't done any securing of the hands or the front of the watch. And this is where the little flashlight, if you have a UV flashlight, will come in very handy, because what I want to do is just put a little drop of resin in each of the battery spots and then just hit it with the UV light to hold that jewelry bail in place. So I'm going to put my gloves on, and then I'm just going to carefully put one little drop on top of my jewelry bail. Now, if you don't have a flashlight, you can certainly slide this under your lamp, but I'm just going to quickly secure these with my little flashlight. All right, so we're ready for the fun part. So I'm going to take my wooden skewer and I'm just going to slide my watch through the jewelry bail that I've applied. And then I'm going to take some resin and drop it in the center. Now, you don't want too much. You can always add a little bit more, so don't overdo it. And then once you have a nice little pool in the middle, you're going to just sort of tip your watch face around and let that resin kind of move out toward the edge. And when you get kind of close to the edge, you can go ahead and use your paintbrush to just pull it right up to the edge. You don't want it dripping off, but you can pull that resin right up to the edge of your watch face. You just want to try to get a smooth, kind of slightly domed form on top of the watch face itself. And I don't really see any air bubbles in this one. Sometimes you get air bubbles, and I've seen people remove them with lighters and things. I just have a hair dryer that I put on my low setting if I need to, but I really don't see any air bubbles in this one. So I'm just going to remove it from the skewer and slide it under my resin lamp. You can see an air bubble there. It might pop before we get all the resin moved around, but if not, we'll just use the hair dryer to pop that bubble. Oops. It's not the end of the world if you have some drip off, but it's thick enough that it does stay on the watch face pretty nicely as long as you don't have too much excess on there. All right, I don't know if this shows up in camera, but I do have a little bubble right there above the 5, so let's, oops, I've also got a hole here. I'm going to put just a tiny bit more resin in here. So I've got a real low spot right here. Little hole right there. All right, I think I got a pretty even coat, but you can still see that bubble. And now I'm ready to slide that under my lamp as well. All right, so I've completed the fronts of my watch faces, and hopefully you can see how shiny they are and how there's just a really nice coat that's kind of holding all of the front of that watch in place. So I want to do a similar process on the back of the watch. Now it's not going to be quite as smooth because we have the watch works back here, but I'm just going to squeeze a little bit of my resin on the working part of the watch and spread it around so that I have a thin layer on the whole back of the watch as well. And my little UV light has a 60-second timer and a 2-minute timer. I usually put my pieces in for 4 minutes just because I want to make sure they're cured. I don't know if you can actually over cure them. I don't think you can. So I think this resin says it takes 3 minutes. I don't usually worry about the air bubbles on the back, but I've got quite a few here, so I'm going to go ahead and knock those down. I don't know why that didn't work. Usually it works, but I'm just popping them with my paintbrush. That seems to work too. If you have done a lot of resin work, you might have some pointers for me. I don't know. I'm kind of winging it here. All right, so I'm going to pop that under my little lamp and carry on with finishing the backs of my pieces. I'm ready to do the assembly now, and to do that I'm going to use my jump rings. I think these are 5 or 6 millimeter, as I mentioned. I've got my little earring hooks and my watch faces that are all ready to go. And I'm going to be using my round tip jewelry pliers and my needle nose pliers for this step. So because of the way that the earrings hang, I want to twist my little jewelry bale quarter turn here. So I'm just going to use my round tipped jewelry pliers to turn it 1/4 turn. And that way when I apply my jump ring and my earring hook, this will hang forward. You could also add an extra jump ring if you wanted to do it that way, but I just like to adjust my jewelry bale. So the next thing I want to do is take my jump ring and find the little opening. Sometimes it's hard to see. You have to do it by feel sometimes. And then I'm just going to take my 2 pairs of pliers and twist the jump ring to open it up. And then you want to reposition your pliers so that you can get everything put together here. So I'm going to slide on my watch face. So then to apply your earring hook, you want to hold it so that the curve is kind of facing you and also facing the watch face itself when you slide it on. And then you can close the jump ring just the opposite direction that you opened it. So when you're wearing the earring, the watch face should face out. And that completes my newest iteration of my watch face earrings. Be sure to check the description box for more resources and a place to sign up to receive the Upcycled Design Lab newsletter. And if you enjoyed today's content, click that like button or share this video so YouTube will know to show you more content from the Upcycled Design Lab. If you haven't already, I'd love for you to click that subscribe button to join my YouTube community. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.